a lot with women that come to me in this industry and in our community is that they will say things like, they'll really be concerned about things that aren't all that important. So things like, what's this exact thing that guys like? One of the big things that I get all the time is women will come and they'll be like, okay, you've got to have big boobs and a nice big butt, and you've got to be this tall and this thin and this and that, and it's kind of like this thing where they grabbed a whole bunch of different things that they know that different guys like, and they shoved them all together, and they're like, this is what men want, right? And it's really interesting because a lot of those things that they talk about aren't actually the most important things for a guy. Guys make decisions about who they date, who they are in a relationship with, who they want to be with in a long-term relationship versus something that's just casual, based on emotion, right? They do it because of how they feel. They feel a certain way, and it might be with a woman that in fact, a lot of times it's with a woman who isn't what they visually thought in their minds, right? Maybe of some guys who do this. They're like, oh, I want this type of a woman, and then they end up with somebody completely different. Or women who do that for a matter of fact, where they're like, oh, I'd love to have this kind of guy, and then they end up with somebody that's completely opposite of what they said, because we are attracted to certain things and we feel a certain way. And that's what we make most of our decisions on in our lives, regardless of what we're making decisions on. And so today I wanted to talk about this subject of feeling really good in your body, feeling really great about yourself and who you are, because it's that emotion that you bring to a guy that is by far the most important thing. And I wanted to bring on this great expert that we have here, Una Duncan. She's a world, an international best-selling author. She's a fitness expert, and she really helps people connect with themselves, connect with their emotions, and really love themselves and love their bodies and love exercising. And so I just wanted to come on and bring her. We actually met at a Tony Robbins event. I just wanted to throw that out there. We got along great at the event. And so I thought it'd be fun to have her on the channel and come and talk to you guys about her expertise. So.
And we jumped into a freezing cold river together.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We jumped into a freezing cold river together.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for the intro, Matt. You know what was reminding me when you said, women will often have an idea of the type that they're attracted to, but then sometimes they end up with someone who doesn't necessarily fit that type, but it makes them feel that way. And the biggest example I was thinking of, if you ask a lot of women, they'll say, oh, I like a really tall man. Right? But if you get a man who's not that tall, but he really owns his masculinity and he makes you feel in your feminine and feel taken care of, or whatever those feelings are that you want, then you're like, oh, I'm fine without the tall. This is the feeling that I wanted. And so that was the kind of example that I could really relate to as a woman that you're talking about. And I do think that there are so many women out there that we are brainwashed women. We are brainwashed to think that men will not be attracted to us if we don't have the boobs or the waist or the bum or the whatever is the latest. And by the way, you guys know that what men are attracted to changes all the time, right? Like when, in my short life, I'm 43. I still remember times when I wanted, to look like Linda Hamilton in Terminator. So she had this really buff kind of look. And then I remember in the 90s, what was really popular was enormous boobs, but like a stick, like Winona Ryder. I really wanted to look like Winona Ryder. And then now it's all about the bum. But when I was a teenager, like you couldn't have a bum. That was sort of really bad. It was all about the boobs. So this stuff changes all the time. And ladies, if we were to try and adapt our physical bodies to fit the latest trends of what men are supposedly attracted to, which is mostly BS. It's just fashion trends meant to sell us stuff. But if we were to try to change our bodies to fit this, we would go berserk, and we kind of do, right? So that is one of the reasons why it is so important to feel good right now, because as Matt was saying, it's really the way you make a man feel that he is attracted to. And he's going to feel so good if you feel good. I'm sure, Matt, you probably talk about this all the time. Like, that's what dudes want, right? They want to be around a woman who is happy and who's feeling good, and that they can feel like they are helping her feel good, right?
Yeah. Well, there's, I just want to mention one thing here. I have a friend that I used to hang out with a lot who was one of those kinds of guys who used to go for women who were like stick thin.
Mm.
Right. And that was his type. And everybody knew that was his type. That was the kind of girl that he would go after when he saw somebody in a bar. He would go after the thin, really thin
Tiny
girl.
girl.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because the woman that he ended up with was not this, super thin kind of woman that he would normally go after when you'd see him going after girls in the bar.
Yeah.
And he ended up, getting into this long-term relationship, and they've been seeing each other for a while. And it was interesting because I pulled him aside one time because I wanted to talk to him about it, because this is all I talk about for the most part, right? It's just like personal development stuff and dating and relationships.
Yeah,
And so
I love it.
I was like, hey man, his name's Michael. And I was like, hey Michael, normally you go for these kinds of women, and everybody knows about that. And, the girl that you're with now is not, like nothing wrong with her by any means, but she's not that type that you normally would go for. And I was like, what's the deal with that? And what he told me was one of the most fascinating things I've ever heard. And he's like, yeah, man, I don't know. It's just when I saw her, it's just, there's something about her that just made me want to run over and just like grab her and start kissing her.
Wow.
And he's like, I know she's not the normal type that I go for. And if I would have told you what kind of a type that I look for, it wasn't her.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's something about her that just made me feel so attracted to her. And so I went over and talked to her, and, we're in a relationship now, and I still feel that way, which he said normally he doesn't. Like after a period of time, he kind of loses interest and pulls away and all that kind of stuff and disappears. Right. And he said that he was just like, I don't know what it is about her, but she's got some kind of energy about her that I just connect with, and I just want to be around her all the time and just, hold her and kiss her and, tear her clothes off and make love to her. And, and so it was just a completely different experience that he had when he was connecting, instead of it just being this kind of superficial kind of body. I'm looking at her and I see this, this attractiveness from kind of a primal standpoint. It like goes even deeper, right? And it goes into something that's in his soul, right? Something
Energetic
that
connection.
he's really looking for. Yeah. And so I just wanted to throw that in there because I thought it was
love that story. That's great. That's awesome. So here's one thing that I wanted to say, that one of the problems I think that a lot of women have when you start to think of, okay, yes, I know confidence is good, so I'm gonna start to be more confident. I'm gonna start to, and also magazines are always like, love yourself the way you are. You should, all that sort of stuff. We're constantly pummeled with, change your body, fit these beauty ideals. And then if you don't, but you should love yourself the way you are, but change it if you can, but love yourself the way you are. And right, that's kind of the messaging that we get all the time. But one of the problems that I think that women have with this idea of loving themselves the way they are is that they get concerned. Okay, wait a second. If I allow myself to be okay with the way I am right now, isn't that letting myself off the hook when I really feel like I need to lose, 10, 15 pounds, when I really should start exercising more or whatever? They really feel like they're going to be letting themselves off the hook, and that without that pressure that they're putting on themselves, then they will just, binge eat or let themselves go completely. So here's the thing. It's actually kind of the opposite. We have this idea that if we look in the mirror, we play boot camp sergeant with ourselves and say, okay, this is, you got to get rid of this and you got to fix that. Then we will shame ourselves into behaving properly. But it actually completely doesn't work that way. In fact, the more you beat yourself up, the more likely you are to binge, to skip your workouts, to feel depressed, which will cause that sort of cycle. And they've done studies on this. They did one, Matt, where they made a bunch of test subjects eat donuts. And then they gave half of the people messages of, self-compassion and said, hey, it doesn't matter that you ate the donut. We told you to do it. It's our fault. There's not even any calories in it. Don't worry about it. And then the other group did not get those messages. And then they had them sit and do like math or something like that. And they just happened to have candy on the tables. And guess which group ate twice as much candy? The ones that didn't get the messages of self-compassion, just unconsciously ate twice as much candy, even though they had just had the donut. And so this is the thing, is that if you are right now beating yourself up, thinking if I beat myself up, then I'll behave properly, I'll make myself feel bad enough in order to motivate myself, it won't work. It really won't work. And the second thing that I want you to know is that, exactly like Matt was saying, not only are men attracted to the way they feel around you, but they feel like that around you because you feel like that about yourself. Like there is nothing more of a turnoff to a man. Actually, I mean, Matt, correct me, I'm not an expert in this, but this is my guess. This is my guess, that when we put the burden on men to make ourselves feel good about ourselves, that's not a job they want. They don't want that job. We have to show up feeling good about ourselves. That's not their job to tell us that we're not fat or blah, 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 blah. Okay?
Right. It's just to interject there real
please.
quick. It's just it's exhausting, is what it feels like, right? It feels like, I mean, like initially it's not a big deal, right? Because you kind of feel like you're needed, right?
Sure,
You feel
sure.
like you have this job and you have this role, and you're like, oh yeah, no, you're great, no, you look great, and everything's great, and yeah, oh, how are you feeling, right? But if you have to do that all the time, and she's constantly seeking it, and she's contacting you, and constantly baiting you for compliments, and trying to make herself feel better by connecting with you all the time, it just, over time, what ends up happening is guys start feeling tired, and they start thinking in their mind, like, I don't know if I could be with her long term, because like this is something that he knows that he's going to have to deal with for the rest of your lives together. And so he's like, for a lot of guys, it ends up kind of cutting you off from being long-term relationship type of material, not because he doesn't want to have you as a long-term relationship, but because he doesn't feel like he's really up to the task, because, or if he even wants it, right? Like, do I want to experience this forever?
And even if he wants it, like, can I even be successful in helping her feel better? Because every time I tell her she looks fine, she says, no, I don't. So you're making him feel unsuccessful if you're kind of rejecting that idea.
Right.
So,
and also I just want to say one other thing, is that what ends up happening is that it usually gets worse, right? Because at first, for the first couple of months that you meet somebody, there's kind of this persona thing, right? Where you're on like your good behavior, and then you're right. And you're hanging out. And then over time, what happens is you start becoming more and more comfortable. And so your stuff starts coming out more and more and more.
Totally.
Right. And if it's like crazy, right, and it just keeps getting worse and worse, which is what ends up happening if you're really down on yourself and you're really depressed, and every time you're around him you feel good, but that's the only time you feel good is when you're around him. You start getting addicted to being around him and that emotion and whatever he does in order to trigger that emotional state that you have. And so you're constantly seeking it. Right. And for him, it's like overload, and
Totally. And I think that you just touched on the kind of the most important thing, is that we think we want, flat abs or like defined arms or whatever we think we want, a thigh gap. I don't know, thigh gap is the thing now. We think we want these things, but actually what we want is the feeling we think we're going to have when we have these things. So it's not that, because a lot of people, this is what happens. They get the flat ab, or, maybe they get the flat abs, but if they've been constantly training themselves to be discontent with their body, they'll get the flat abs and they'll say, yeah, but I really got to lose some here, or I really got to get a whatever. They'll come up with something else because that is the only neural pathway they've ever practiced. And then the other thing is that it actually won't work, like I said. But even if it does work, even if you managed to somehow get yourself down to the flat abs of 120 pounds or whatever you think your goal is, if you haven't been practicing the feeling that you actually want, you're going to get there and you're still not going to have that feeling. So what you need to understand is that it is the feeling that you want, and you have to start training for that feeling at exactly the weight you are at right now today. And it can be hard, like training for anything. It's like a muscle. It is a muscle. This is the muscle that you have to start building. And you got to start thinking about it as training, like any other kind of training. Because if you think you're going to get down to 120 pounds or whatever, and then suddenly you'll feel, sexy, confident, however you think you're going to feel, but you've never practiced it, that would be like asking yourself to do like a one-armed pull-up when you've never even carried your groceries. Like, you will not be able to access those feelings. You've never trained for it. So you have to start training for that now. And so you are going to start doing things like looking in the mirror and being like, holy crap, you look amazing. Like, giving yourself compliments. You're going to have to, like, I had one friend, actually, one of my clients, she said, Una, I exercise all the time. I eat really well. How can I get rid of the cellulite on my thighs? Okay. So now, if you were to hear that, you would say, what I asked her was, why do you want to get rid of the cellulite on your thighs? And obviously she's probably like rolling her eyes, being like, duh, because I want to wear short shorts and a bathing suit. And what I want to say is, actually, you want to feel a certain way in short shorts and a bathing suit. So, and I knew this girl. I knew she exercised all the time. She ate really well. And I could probably give her a really strict regime. I could tell her about, using fake tan and Preparation H. Preparation H actually gets rid of cellulite, just tip if you ever do want to do that. So I could tell her about all this stuff, but it would be a massive project. And the project would be way better spent on her practicing wearing short shorts. And every time she has that thought of, oh my God, are people noticing my cellulite? Thinking like, damn right, they're looking at my hot legs. And the problem is that a lot of people, when I tell them that, they're like, oh, I'm not ready. Like, I can't, that's too much for me. That's like, ask for me to look in the mirror naked. Even just that is often too much for women. And so then you just want to start, like any kind of training, start with the little baby steps and work up incrementally. So if you're not at a point where you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, oh yeah, maybe you could just start by looking in the mirror and thinking, I accept this body. I'm grateful for this body. And then once you've got like a genuine sense of acceptance, of gratitude, maybe then you move up to, and this lipstick looks kind of nice on me. And then maybe you move up to, my legs actually look really good in heels, or whatever. So you start to, like, it's just baby steps. You're building that confidence muscle, because really that is what you want. It's not the cellulite free legs. It's not the whatever. It's the confidence.
Yeah. And that's the confidence, and that emotion is what brings everything else. The more you feel good about yourself, and the more you just feel good in general, right? Yeah. And the happier you are, and the more you're celebrating, and the more that you experience life feeling in a empowering emotional state, the more that you'll want to start feeling that more, and the more that you'll start doing things in order to start feeling that way. And one of the things that helps you feel that way more often is a little thing we call progress, right? Mm-hmm. Where you make progress doing something, right? Which can be, losing weight, or getting the, toned butt you want, or any of that kind of stuff. Right. And the more that you move towards that, and you're coming from a space of feeling good, the more you start celebrating it, the more you feel good. And kind of like what Una was talking about earlier, though, if you haven't practiced this, if you haven't done it for a while, it can be a very challenging thing, and so you start out small, like what she was saying, and you can just do anything, right? Just one of the things that I started doing when I first started doing stuff like this is I would get like strips, and I would write out things, and I would place it places where I would see it. Right. And some of it was a little bit too bold for me, but at the same time, it started getting my mind thinking in the right direction, and started when I'd look at it, it's, one of the things that we talk about a lot on this channel is what you focus on, you feel, and what you feel, you receive. Right. And so you want to change your focus to the things that you want, and the things that you want to feel, and the thoughts, more importantly than anything. And I talk about this in my programs, right? The thoughts that you want to have, and doing it from a holistic standpoint, right? If you're just working on that external thing, which is what a lot of women get kind of caught up in, is they focus on, the external result, just like what Una was saying, you end up at the result. If you end up at the result, and it's not enough. And it's never enough, and it never will be enough. And that's why you need to come from that place from the beginning. And if you're not in the beginning, just right now is a great time.
Totally. And you know what, Matt, that reminds me exactly what you said about progress is perfect. That is like another one of the secrets to making yourself feel better right now is that, so, you want that feeling, right? You think you're going to have when you get the abs or whatever. But the best part, this is so interesting. And Matt, maybe you remember Tony saying this. He's like, happiness is the progression, is making meaningful progress towards goals. Okay. So it's really funny. A lot of studies show that we're actually happiest when we're moving towards our goals rather than when we've achieved them. So if you want to start feeling happier and more confident about your body now, and this is totally backed up by research, you can even just do one workout, and already you have a slight shift of feeling a little bit more confident about your body. Any progress you make, I think even scheduling your workout. Once you've scheduled your workout, you're like, right, I'm on track. I'm making progress. Choosing a salad, you chose one salad and you're like, okay, I'm on track. I'm making progress. Every single one of these choices is a vote for the new identity, the identity that you want and the feeling that you want. And it doesn't have to happen when you've achieved the goal. It doesn't have to happen, for example, a thing I'm hearing a lot now is, well, when this pandemic is over, then I will blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, now, like there's always this chance to make a choice that's a vote for the identity you want. You don't have to wait for Monday. You don't have to wait for the summer. You can start that feeling right now by making a choice that's even just the tiniest little 1 degree towards the goal that you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was there anything else that you wanted to talk about here, Una?
Let me see. I'm just looking at my notes here. I think that actually that thing about the progress, and you just reminded me, that was the other thing that I really wanted to nail home. And other than, I just want to reiterate the idea that when you start practicing these loving thoughts towards yourself and your body and complimenting yourself and finding little things to love and to feel confident about, it will feel like a lie. It 100% will. And you just keep doing it. It's a fake it till you make it kind of thing. And you do want to back it up until it feels somewhat reasonable. Like Matt was saying, like it was a little bit too much for him, but it's starting to train your brain in the right direction. And back it up until you can kind of buy it. And then you start adding on. And again, this is the muscle you want to train. The feeling of feeling confident, sexy, whatever is the feeling that you think you're going to have when you got the smoking body or whatever.
Okay. One thing I want to mention real quick is if you're interested in getting a free chapter of Una's book, you can go. You can you can go to fitfeelsgood.com/chapter, and you can get that. There should be a link above or below this video, depending on where you're watching this right now. And if there isn't, then just go to fitfeelsgood.com/chapter. And so if you have any questions about anything, go ahead and ask your questions in the chat. It looks like we've got a lot of comments here. So yeah, it's everything that you've been talking about is absolutely wonderful. I love everything that we're totally in alignment with the things that we think about and the things that we do, which is probably why we met at a Tony event.
For sure.
Because, we're those kinds of people, right? Personal development is great.
That's right. Yeah. And if this is the kind of philosophy you're teaching your people and they want to apply it to a fitness journey, that's what I talk about in my book. So it's really applying this mindset towards whatever it is that you want to achieve in your fitness and your health and your wellness, which, right now is not a bad focus to have.
Yeah, it's a great focus to have. This is a perfect time to start working on it at home, working on it. If you go out, and go for a run or whatever, there's plenty of places. I know where I am. There's I didn't even know there's some parks out here that have gyms and stuff at them. Yeah. And so I've been checking that out. So let's go to the comments. Let's go to the comments real quick. Awesome. Cheryl says, love your sage advice so far.
There's a warning there from Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you. Amy says, good afternoon. So happy to catch you live. Well, I am happy that you are here with us right now. Let's see. Hello, Matthew. Greetings from Tanzania. I'm your #1 fan. Well,
nice.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about feelings, feeling good, what's going on with you, connecting with yourself, feeling confident, being in your emotions, experiencing life the way that you want to, losing weight, anything like that?
Yeah.
You're welcome to ask us any kinds of questions. Actually, if you have any questions at all about anything, we'll answer anything right now.
Matt, I did think of one other thing is that sometimes
Okay.
when people get access to this, philosophy of trying to make yourself of, monitoring your thoughts and thinking about the things that you want rather than thinking about the things you don't want, etc., is that they start to get a little panicky because they might have some negative thought patterns.
Mhm.
And then they will start to beat themselves up for having the negative thought patterns. So one script that I offer to people is that if you do hear yourself beating yourself up, then your new script is, even though I have this negative thought pattern of hating my thighs or whatever, I still deeply and completely love and accept myself exactly as I am, even though I have this pattern. And the fact that I'm starting to hear it means that I'm getting closer to letting it go. Because when you bring it to your awareness, that's when you can consciously choose it or not. And if you start to hear it, then it's not, you're actually separating yourself from it a little bit. So that's one thing, not to freak out. If you hear yourself thinking bad thoughts and think, oh, I'm thinking bad thoughts, I'm going to binge or whatever. So no, you're hearing it. Now you can stop it and love yourself, even though you have those patterns.
And one thing I wanted to kind of throw in there as well, I'm just like, throwing in things over here. But one thing I want to throw in is, you kind of mentioned this thing where it's like, I don't really feel this. This isn't really me, right? I'm not, one of the things that we get from women all the time is they're like, oh, that's not me, right? Like saying anything other than what I would normally say isn't me, right? And it's like, is that really you? And the metaphor that I have for this is, think of it more like trying on a new pair of pants, right? You put on a new pair of pants and it feels kind of awkward and weird because it's not, you just put them on for the first time and they're built from a factory. They're not made for you, right? But over time, what ends up happening is you kind of wear them in and they start feeling really comfortable. And next thing you know, they're your favorite pair of jeans. Totally. And so that's kind of the metaphor, right? Like sometimes you might start bringing up new thoughts or bringing up new emotions, and you're like, no, because some women kind of pull on these identities of like, I'm just a negative person, or I'm just angry, or I'm just whatever, right? I'm depressed, I'm whatever, and then you take that on, and that becomes who you are. But that's not really who you are. You're a growing and evolving person who can take on new identities and then feel a new way, and you can actually become a person who's a happy person, an excited person, a person who loves your life and experiences joy all the time if you take on a new identity and start thinking in a new way and pulling in these emotions that you can feel whenever you want to feel them.
Totally. I think, well, it's all about a growth mindset, right? Which has been, there's so much about growth mindset and how important it is. And it's so funny because I don't know if there's any women here who are moms, but we would never tolerate our children saying these absolutes about themselves. Oh, I'm just bad at math. I'm just, whatever. We'd say, no, you're bad at math now. There's a great personal development trip. When you do fortune cookies and there's that meme where you add in bed? Like you'll meet a stranger in bed or whatever. And then so what we're supposed to do is, if you hear yourself beating yourself up about something, then you add yet onto it. So like, I'm not in great shape yet. I'm not good at Zumba, whatever, yet. And so you add the yet on there, and then it just reminds your brain that you have a growth mindset and that you can really accomplish anything you want, that these things are not fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I actually heard a guy, this personal development guy, one time say, if you catch yourself thinking something that's negative, what you do is you change the way that you say it to "I haven't yet," right? Or "I used to," like in the past, I thought, whatever, right? And then it associates it from you, and it makes it this thing that you did once instead of taking it on as an identity of who you are.
It's an old version of you.
All right, let's see what Irene says. Hello from California. When a guy says he don't feel like he's even close to being ready to have that kind of a relationship with anyone, is it considered as a rejection? And that's a really interesting question, Irene, because what's interesting is you're at the point of like you took this guy says this thing, right? And you're in your mind and you're like, what do I make this mean? Right? You're like at this crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it mean I'm being rejected, or you can make it mean something completely different, like, this guy has issues right now and he's not in a space, right? He told you literally, I'm not in a space to date anybody or be in a relationship with anybody. And what you're doing is you're saying, well, he said that, should I make it be something about me, right? Should I make it, something that's personal about me? And my suggestion is that you don't do that. Regardless of what it actually is, my suggestion is that you don't do that. And instead, you just take it at face value. He said that he's not ready for a relationship. And my suggestion is you just take it as he's not ready for a relationship. So did you want to say anything about that, Una?
No, I was like, that's true. I was like, he told you exactly. And I wouldn't exactly what you said. I wouldn't make that about you.
All right. Rose says, hello, Matthew and Una from Redondo Beach, California. Hello.
Hello.
Teresa says, love your relationship advice, has helped me a lot being a widow and in a new relationship. Well, I am glad that you are here, Teresa. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. So we've got another person saying that they're my biggest fan. Or are you saying you're Una's biggest fan? Whose biggest fan are you? And by the way, I think you have competition for the biggest fan. So let's see, what else do we have? Marjorie says, hello, Matthew and Una. How are you both from the Philippines?
Cool.
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Una?
I'm great.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. Linda says, confidence is sexy. I agree with that.
Yeah,
it is
for sure.
super sexy. So Gladys says, I have a lot of skulls on my legs. Am always uncomfortable in public. Is there anything I can do about it?
Oh, Gladys, my friend, I don't know what you mean by skulls.
I think, I don't either. In my mind, what I'm picturing is like tattoos of skulls, or like skulls like tights or something like that. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about tattoos? Do you have tattoos of skulls on your legs? Is that what's going on?
Or I'm wondering if it autocorrected cellulite or something.
I don't know. Who knows?
That is a common thing.
Right. Well, we won't know unless she comments again. Yvette says, I guess if you keep saying negative things about yourself, you could start believing it too. Not great. Yes, exactly. This is something that I call the law of belief transference, right? If you believe something more confidently than the person that you're with believes something different, you will transfer that belief over to them, even if they don't want to believe it. Right. And if you believe that you're not worthy and that you're not good enough and that you're ugly and all these different things, right, and you're around him, no matter how strong his belief is, if your belief is stronger, which it will be, and he's, talking to you over time, he will start to pick up on that and he will start to feel weighed down by it at the very least, if not taking on some of those thought patterns as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Cheryl says, sitting in my boho tree house overlooking the lake, listening to your relationship advice. Always loving it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Irene says, when I ask what he values in people, he says competence. He needs someone as good or better than him. Does it mean I'm not good enough for him? Yeah, it's really interesting, Irene, because you are also at a crossroads here, right? You're like, what should I make this mean, right? And it's interesting. One of the things I want you to think about is the fact that whenever, a lot of women out there, and I'm sure you're probably the only woman out here, that does this. But when something happens, notice how you go to the worst case scenario, right? The worst case scenario is I'm not good enough for him, right? And this could mean anything. It could mean a whole bunch of different things, right? It could mean he could be talking about friendships. You know, he could be talking about like what we were talking about earlier, where a guy says that he wants one thing, but ends up with somebody else because of his emotions, right? Generally speaking, most guys aren't looking for a woman who is trying to compete with him in a whole bunch of different areas, right? Like it's not all that attractive to most guys, right? It might be fun, it might be interesting, it might be a good thing to have in a buddy, but for a lot of guys out there, they aren't really looking for somebody who's like better than him at things that he's good at, right? And so that's something I think you ought to think about. And the other thing I think you ought to think about is not making it mean that you're not good enough for him, but instead finding out, instead changing the way that you think about yourself, so that instead of coming up with the idea that he thinks about me as not good enough, instead coming from a standpoint of, what if I'm incredibly attractive? What if, men are absolutely, feel like I'm irresistible to them? What, and coming from like mindsets like that, it's something I talk a lot about in my Forever Woman program, where I talk about, changing the way that you think, so that when you interact with a guy, what ends up happening is you have a different way that you make things mean. And if you come up to a guy and you start talking to him and he says something to you, and whatever, it doesn't matter what he says, and you think to yourself, does this mean that I'm not good enough for him, right? Or if you make it mean something like, oh, he's creating a challenge for me, or oh, he's trying to test me in some way, or oh, he's really attracted to me, and so he's trying to come up with reasons why he's like trying to, I don't know, whatever, right? Like maybe this is a bad example coming off the top of my head from this, but changing the way that you think about it, and coming from a standpoint of something that makes you feel more confident about yourself, rather than coming from a standpoint of making yourself feel worse about yourself. I think you'll do a lot better, not only with men, but in the rest of your entire life.
Matt, I actually had a question based on those two last questions. Seemed to be, my man said this, does that mean he's thinking this about me? Do men communicate in those kind of cryptic ways? Because I know that for a woman, so I might say something like, oh, I really like flowers. And obviously I'm telling him to buy me flowers. That's how I communicate as a woman. But if a man says, I like flowers, maybe he's just saying that and it wasn't about me at all. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you, do men communicate like that?
Sometimes they do. But it's not as often as women do. Right. So a guy might say something in a cryptic way because he doesn't want to hurt a woman's feelings. Right. And he doesn't want to get himself in trouble, or, a whole bunch of other things. Right. He might say things in a little bit more of a cryptic way. But, a lot of times it's women overthinking it. Like you can see in some of these comments that we have here, it's probably them just taking it and then, going somewhere else with it, which is really difficult not to do, right? Mm-hmm. If that's a habit of yours where you do that every time, right? Yeah. And so instead of just trying to not do it, in my opinion, it would be better to kind of do it in a different way, right? So instead of taking it and, going over here and being like, oh, it's this negative thing, taking it and going over here and saying, it's this thing that empowers that makes my life better, that makes me feel better, or, at the very least kind of like brushes off my shoulder and doesn't really impact me at all. Cool. So yeah. Yep. All right. Anonymous Facebook user says, it's always something with me, never satisfied. Yeah. So I think she's referring to the idea of like getting to a success point and then not being satisfied with it. Absolutely.
And that is always the pattern. So what we have to do is start to really appreciate the journey and the progress, because, most of the time when people get to their big moment, it's not, it's usually not quite as awesome as we thought it was going to be. And so you have to start loving the journey and appreciating, it's a win every time you exercise, not when you get the six pack. That's not the win. The win is every time you get yourself up and out the door. You know, it's a win every time you choose the salad instead of the fries. That's when you give yourself the pat on the back and say, yes, I'm a healthy person. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So Cheryl says, people obsessed with their body image is exhausting. Shut up and live. That's what I'm talking about. Shut up and live. Stop being so obsessed with your body image. All right. I'm going to butcher this name. I'm not the greatest with names.
Hyacinth?
Say that again?
Hyacinth?
Well, there you
I would
go.
say.
Somebody's good with names. Hello, Matthew. Sometimes the men am attracted to death are not feeling the same with me. It's crazy.
I think she's saying the men that I am so attracted to, I'm attracted to them to death. They don't feel the same way to me.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting situation that you have there. Let's see. Irene says, how come the guy that I'm friends with, for he didn't feel the same with me and yet still agree to be friends with me, also be vulnerable? The reason for that, Irene, is because men have emotional needs, right? I just talked about how men make decisions based on their emotions. Well, men have emotional needs, and so they want to be friends with you, and they want to, get certain things out of being connected with you and being in relation to you, whether it's a romantic relationship or not, right? And so it's not always just romantic relationship or nothing, right? There's varying degrees of what men can want, right? And get and experience. And they want to have friends, and they want to be connected, and they want to be vulnerable, and they want to feel good, right? They want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel good about their relationship to you. They want to experience the things that they need and they feel like they need to experience in their lives. And so he can absolutely want to connect with you, but if he's afraid, right? If he's got some fears around himself not being good enough, right? Where he feels like maybe he isn't good enough to be in a relationship with you because he, typical men problems, doesn't feel like he has enough money to be in a relationship, or, doesn't feel like his personality is good enough. He hasn't achieved enough in his life. He's, not respected enough, or not good enough of a man, or not masculine enough, or, doesn't have, Brad Pitt's body, or, all the same things in some regards that some women have that they have issues with, right? If he feels like, he wants this connection, but for some reason he's just not good enough to be in a relationship, he might just ask you for friends. That way he doesn't have to face those fears that he has and face those challenges and whatever that he has about his own personal emotions. So yeah, did you want to say anything about that?
No, I'm loving listening to you. I'm learning so much here. This is awesome.
Yep. So Manon says, true, what you focus on, you feel, and what you feel, you start receiving. That's right. That is right. Pretty Feisty says, where do I buy her book? Yeah,
everywhere they sell books. Healthy as fuck. If you go to my site there at Fit Feels Good, if you want at-home workouts or anything like that, you can get them there. But if you go to book at Fit Feels Good, there'll be links directly on Amazon and independent booksellers and stuff like that. And you can get a free chapter there, so you can see if it's your thing.
Yeah, and it's got great reviews, so
it's number one bestseller. Yeah,
just go buy it. Just go buy it. I don't know what you're even thinking, contemplating it for. Helena says, this is a great topic. Thanks, Helena. Thanks for being here. Helena's a friend of mine. Jane says, I agree with you both, especially the comments on progress, process, and goals. Have just lost 23 kilos.
Nice job.
Wow.
That's not easy.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That is impressive.
Yeah. And so it is all about the progress. Yeah.
Yeah, progress. It's all about progress. It's all about feelings. It's all about all that stuff, right? The feels. Focus on the feels. That's what you want to do. Focus on the feels. So Diana says, hi, Matthew. Love you. A question, please. A man got angry and called me a terrible name. Ooh. I said I felt hurt, and he said, and he should apologize. He went quiet and didn't do something he said he would the next day. It's been 6 days. What's the right way to behave now. Plus, I feel so sad now. Yeah, I mean, that sounds horrible. And it sucks, and people have issues, right? Everybody's got issues. Well, I mean, some people have issues, not perfect people like me and Una.
No issues here.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, he got mad. He called you a terrible name. You told him that you felt hurt and that he should apologize. And so he's gone quiet and disappeared. And so what you need to do, and I don't know what your situation is, right? It doesn't say whether you're in a committed relationship or whether you guys are just dating or just seeing each other or whether you're casual or what it is. But my suggestion is that you live your life. And at some point, he will decide whether he wants to come back and apologize or not. And if he does, then you get to decide whether you want to let him back into your life. And my suggestion is that if he does come back and he, one, make sure that he apologizes. And if he doesn't, don't let him back into your life. Two, make sure you set a boundary around it. I go over that in detail in my How to Talk to a Guy program. But basically what you want to do is say what it is that you want, tell him that you'd love to be in a great relationship with him. But, he said something to you that was really hurtful and that you respect yourself far too much to be in a relationship with somebody that's going to treat you like that. And then ask him if he'll agree that he won't ever say something like that again. And that's how you set a boundary. And so those two things, right? One is make him apologize. Two, make sure you set a boundary. And three, make him work to get you back. So make sure that he's investing. He's taking on the masculine role in the relationship. He's doing things like going out of his way to come see you and investing in you from a emotional, mental, time, possibly financial standpoint. That way that you're setting yourself up for the best possible situation that you can with this guy. But I mean, it's one of those things. Another thing you have to remember is that people live in patterns, right? We all live in patterns. We all have patterns for things that we do. And so if he's done this one time and he's getting all kind of cranky and leaving, this is a window into what life will be like with him. And so, you have to remember that. And people can change, but most people don't. And so you have to remember these kinds of things and know what's going on and don't hold on to it forever, right? You want to let go and forgive yourself and, but always remember what's going on and, make sure that you're getting yourself into a good situation. I hope that answered your question, Diana. So Nika says, I have a very unhealthy body image of myself. Could some type of counseling help with this? If so, what kind?
You could try cognitive behavioral therapy. That's where you start to notice your thoughts and adjust your behavior. That's the only sort of therapy type that I can think of. If you do have a body image, I strongly suggest you get my book, but cognitive behavioral therapy would be the first thing that I would Google in your situation. It really will be about noticing the thoughts and deciding whether you want to continue with that thought or not, and then just start interrupting those patterns and with a lot of compassion for yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good answer there, Una. All right, let's see what Belinda says. You always get what you expect. Not sure if that's true, but it's an interesting idea. Let's see. Anonymous Facebook user says, I do this stuff all the time. Well, you do, huh? You should just come on here and start your own live stream. Maybe you should be doing this video. Why are we here? Anonymous Facebook user does this all the time. No, that's cool. That's awesome. I'm glad you do this all the time. I hope it helps, and I'm sure it does, right?
Yeah.
So Bunny Bunday says, I think I am fat, but my boyfriend thinks I am too thin. I have gained over 10 pounds since we have been together. I was following a keto diet for type 2 diabetes control and weight control. I do not feel sexy in my current state. It's interesting.
That is interesting. I would be curious as to whether your boyfriend has responded to your feelings of feeling less sexy. That's what I would be wondering about, because I would think that he would respond to your shift in the way you feel in your body, and therefore not encourage you to lose, and or it was gain weight, right? Yeah, gain
Right.
weight. And it's actually quite common for when women move in with men to start eating man food and gain a bit of weight. We go like the love pounds. I don't know. Do you ever talk about that, Matt? Like you need love
No,
pounds?
that's
Oh yeah, no,
first
it's
time
a
I've heard
total
about
thing.
love pounds, but
Yes, yeah, when you're
I have
love.
no doubt in my mind that
Oh
that is
yeah,
true.
you're usually drinking a little bit more and getting the dessert to share, and also then you move in together, and then get a lot of more takeout, and you end up eating man food. And usually love pounds are the best way to, like, those are the best pounds to gain, and usually they're great and no one cares or whatever, and then you sort of settle into a bit more of a rhythm and everything's fine. In the situation there where you said that you felt like you needed to lose weight and he felt like you needed to gain weight, I would be careful about, and I would love to hear Matt's perspective on this, about what do you do when a man is giving you advice on your body? Because I would feel like the man's job is more to respond to how you want to feel in your body, and to encourage you and support you in behaviors that make you feel amazing in your body. And if he's encouraging you and supporting you and having behaviors that are making you feel worse in your body, whether that's to lose weight or gain weight, then I would say that turns it over to Matt in a relationship. More of a
Yeah.
relationship question, because that puts off alarm bells for me personally. But you speak to that, Matt.
Yeah, and the first thought that comes to my mind, and absolutely, absolutely, what Una just said is very, very important. And the first thought that comes to my mind is coming from a space of compassion for the guy, right? So why would a guy want you to gain weight when you want to lose it, right? And the first answer that comes to my mind when I think about being a guy that's like talking to a woman and wanting her to gain weight and she wants to lose it, is that I would feel more comfortable if she gained weight,
Huh.
right?
Do you think, Matt, there's a possibility he's saying, baby, you don't need to lose weight. In fact, you can gain weight?
It's possible. It's possible. I don't know. All I can do is go from the facts that she said. And
Yeah.
so I mean, that is very, very possible, and make sure that you take what he says into context, like what Una said, and make sure that if it's a situation where, it's kind of like this offhanded thing where he's trying to encourage you, but he's not, but it could be, right? Because some guys, what ends up happening is they get a woman and then they're like, I want to keep her, right?
Mm.
And so they're like, gain weight because I don't like guys looking at you and I don't like you walking around. And it could be a jealousy thing, right? It could be a jealousy, insecurity thing on his part where he's not feeling good enough about himself. And so he's scared that he's going to lose you to some better guy that shows up in your life. And so he wants you to have more weight because he thinks that you'll be less attractive and less guys will look at you, right?
Mm.
Or another thing is that he maybe is overweight. I don't know what your guy looks like, but let's just assume for a minute that he's overweight and that he's a lot overweight than you are, right? And he looks at you and he's like, wow, she's like going towards these goals. She's working on herself. She's doing all these things, but I'm not, right? And so what he ends up feeling from that is being left behind, right? He feels like you're going off without him, like you're doing all these things and that you're going to end up leaving him and he's going to be left behind at some point because you're going to have this new body and this great life and all these great emotions and these great things, but he's not. He's the same old guy that you met, and he's not growing, he's not changing, he's not doing any of those things. And so he might be scared that he's going to lose you or that you're going to be different or, all kinds of different things from this. And so that is my kind of initial thought on that. So we'd need to know a little bit more about exactly what he said to know which one is the correct one. So Juliet says, interesting advice. I'm enjoying your program. One quick question. Why a man would want to ask a woman about her past relationships? There's a whole bunch of different reasons why a man might want to ask a woman about her past relationships. One of them is if he's conscious, right? He might be like, I want to see if there's patterns, right? Because everybody knows, right? If you don't know, let me tell you right now, people live in patterns. And so if he looks at your past relationships, there's a good chance that your current relationship is going to look like your past one, right? And so he wants to know what happened in those relationships. What are the red flags that I'm missing? All that kind of stuff. So that's generally speaking why he might want to ask that question and know more about that. So let's see here. Anonymous Facebook user says, the little miracles is what matters. Little miracles. All right. Marjorie says, hi, Matthew. What if a guy says to you that he likes my personality? That's really feel me confident. Even I'm not sure with that. What? I'm not sure what you're saying there.
I think maybe she's saying that if a guy says, I like your personality, maybe it's a similar kind of question. Is that a brush off? Is that him saying he's not attracted to you physically?
Right.
I don't know if that's what she's asking, but I'd love to know what you say about that.
Okay. It depends. It depends on the situation, right? It depends on the context. So what we're missing right now is kind of the scenario in which he's asking this question or saying this to you. And so we'd need to know, we'd have to know more about the actual scenario in order to actually be able to answer that question. So Pretty Feisty says, where can we buy any published material she's written? She's awesome. You can go to Amazon.com and pick up her program there. Oh, we got another one. Thanks, Una. Just found and bought your book on Amazon.
Yay!
Can't wait to start reading and applying. Cool.
That's awesome, dude. And if you don't want to wait for books, they got Kindle and the audio, and I got to do my own audio, and it was super fun. I should warn you, if you can't tell by the title, it's really sweary. So if you don't like very cheeky language and some dirty jokes, then it probably won't be the book for you.
So Jennifer says, I am loving this beautiful video. Thank you for sharing it.
Nice.
You are absolutely welcome. So Pretty Sivia says, I have a boyfriend, but he always see fault in me. That's a good right there. All right, well, we need to get going here, but thanks everybody for being here with us today. Thank you so much, Una, for being on our channel. If you want to get her book, you can either go to Amazon or you can get the first chapter right here at fitfeelsgood.com/chapter. You can also go there should be a link above or below this video, depending on where you're watching it right now, in order to go get that chapter. Or you can just say, you know what, I'm just going to get her book because it sounds like it's awesome and I love Una and she's great. So that would be my suggestion. Just go to Amazon, follow the lead of Pretty Feisty and go to Amazon and pick up a copy of her book. So thank you everybody so much for being here. I am absolutely honored to have you allow me to be a part of your journey to attracting the man and getting into the relationship that you've always wanted to have. So thank you so much. We have some of the smartest, prettiest, most amazing women in the world as a part of our community. We have women from all over the world. And so thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Una. Did you have any last words you want to say? Oh,
nothing but thank you so much to you, Matt, and to all of your amazing people for the great questions and the engagement. And I absolutely loved it. So thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to get going, but I will speak with you again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.